Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. I'm not even going to do an intro because I don't even know how many times she's been on, everyone. It's like fourth or fifth. I lose track. Oh my God, I've lost track so many times. Like there was one guest that I had on, I don't know, probably like the sixth time, but it's like you just lose track. And I knew that like I'd reached a certain pinnacle when it got to a point where I had messaged someone to come on the show and I didn't know that I'd already had them on before. I didn't recognize them. So then I was like, okay, I reached my limit right there where I was like, once I did that, it's like now I got to narrow things down a little bit because
you need to make yourself a spreadsheet or something so you can keep track of this.
yeah, exactly. That's honestly what I need to do. And if you couldn't tell,
How long
she's
have you been doing this? I mean,
5 years in June.
I was going to say, because I thought you interviewed me when I first started competing, and that was about 5 years ago.
It's going to be hilarious. Like when I eventually stop doing this, where I'm just going to send you and all the guests I've had on multiple times, like videos of like when you first came on to like when you last came on. So first to last, we can see the transformation. We can see the change. But yeah, it's been, almost 5 years. And I cannot believe I've been doing it this long. But hey, I still enjoy having you guys on and sharing your journeys and all that stuff. And the guys, she's 3 weeks out. I don't know if you could tell. I mean, if you couldn't, then, get your eyes checked or something like that. But Sherry, it's been a year since we've last had you on. What have you been up to?
Geez, not a whole lot. Just really, I finished up my last season competing in August. My daughter had moved out, and I spent some time with her that month, and before she left, and then we kind of just got right back into off season, knowing that I was going to compete in the first show of the season. That was as soon as I finished in August. I really kind of wanted to do one more show. If I would have done Savannah, they had the point system last year. I think I probably could have got enough points to qualify for the Olympia. I was right on the verge, but my personal life came first. My children come first, and that meant more to me than the Olympia. So we stepped back, but I knew when I talked to my coach after that season that I was going to make some improvements, and we were just going to jump, right in the first thing this year. So that's what we've been doing, just trying to make some improvements in that short amount of time. It was 6 months, so we did what we could in 6 months. And we'll see how it goes this year. But I felt like I was knocking on the door last year. I was so close. So, yeah.
Well, I remember with last year, not to get too personal, but your daughter was going to become a nun. Is she still doing that?
My daughter is, yes. She has been living in a convent just outside of Tampa for the last 8 months. She takes her temporary vows at the end of May. She's still wholeheartedly committed that this is her journey and this is her calling. So I've been very supportive of that. I do get to go see her once a month, which is great. She doesn't get to come home, so it's a little, heartbreaking there, holidays and celebrations and stuff, not having her with us, but I still get to see her. So I'm not unfortunately going to see her this month because of Lent. I'm not going to go next month or actually, when I say next month, we're in April now, it's April 1st, because it's like a week before my show, and I have to get stuff ready. And so anyhow, I'll be spending Mother's Day with her, and I'll be spending a long weekend for Memorial Weekend when she takes her temporary vows. And so I'm just, I'm very proud of her, and I lay my head down at night. I know she's safe, healthy, and happy, and that's all we can ask for our kids.
This is the one time in the podcast I've heard that someone's kid was becoming a nun. I've never even heard of that. And I honestly was like, oh, they still do that? But that is great. I mean, that's awesome that she has
she's going to be a Catholic school teacher as well. Okay. That's their vocation. So in the process of going through those steps to become a nun, she'll be in college. She'll be earning her bachelor's degree in teaching. And they are in the process of facilitating a girls' boarding school there. So she'll be part of that. So she'll have a lot to keep herself busy.
I mean, that's great that you can at least visit them once a month. But I was shocked when you told me that they couldn't come home at all. That's gotta be something. But yeah, I mean, again, it's part of all that, and that's great. But I mean, going back to you now, because I don't want to make it all about your daughter's nun journey.
It's such a weird thing, though. It's like this, female bodybuilder.
Oh, that's why I had to ask that, because I was like, I have never heard that ever on this podcast. So I was like, okay, so like we said, we hear something new every single time that we do this, and hey, like you said, if you were ever upset about your daughter becoming a nun, she goes, "Mom, you're a bodybuilder. Come on, like we both go to extremes, basically." So
we do.
There's that.
If you ever see me like visiting, I have to cover myself up. I
I
have
was
to
gonna say you didn't want to scare all the nuns if you visited her like next month. That's probably another reason why you're not doing it in April. So
long. I have to wear skirts down to my ankles. I have to wear long sleeves, or at least sleeves that cover majority of my arms and shoulders. When I go to mass, I have to have my head covered. So I look like a freaking linebacker coming in.
how do you buy clothes for that when you're looking like the way you look right now? Do you have to buy like men's sizes or what do you do?
I buy a lot of like cottony stretch dresses, that have some give, and I get it on Amazon because there's nowhere around here that I can shop that either one a I fit in those type of clothes, or that fashionably is fitting for my taste. So yeah, we make it work though.
Well, I ask you this question every single time, and I'll continue to ask it. What is one area of your body that you think you've improved on the most since we last had you on?
Oh, I think I've brought my back, my lats up a little bit wider in the last 6 months. My legs have grown. I'm still not, I still want them bigger. Still, that's my focus is to continue to grow my legs. But I mean, overall, I've been increased in density in the last 6 months. So yeah, so my weak points are still going to be, my hamstrings and my adductors. So if I win this show and I qualify for the Olympia, we're really going to be hammering that up into the show.
If I were to go from all my guests that I've had on, from where they started to like, you were probably the one that you increased just the most every single year that I have you on. So how are you doing that? Because like I've talked to other guests where like they see like minimal increases, but like you always make significant progress however many times I've had you on.
A couple of factors. My coach says I'm a hyper responder. So I just think I add muscle easily. I'm genetically lucky in that aspect. But I train hard. I train. I train with men. I train with my boyfriend. I think that makes a big difference. In the intensity. I have every year learned to hone in my training skills. I'm not just throwing weight around anymore. I've definitely improved my mind muscle connection. And everybody says it, but the big thing is consistency. I live my life like a bodybuilder, whether it's off season or on season. Um, and it's the same for me every day. So essentially, my preps aren't terribly hard because it's the same all year round. I just cut my food back, add a little bit more cardio in, but this is the life that I live, and that's what it takes to make those improvements. It's day in and day out, even when you don't want to.
Yep. And do you ever look back at when you first started this sport and look where you're at now? And what does your mind go through when you realize just all of the progress that you've made?
Um, I'm pretty proud of myself for sticking to something this long, and seeing myself through a commitment that I made, even when times were tough and obstacles were ahead of me in my personal life and things. Knowing now that I have the fortitude mentally to get through pretty much anything I set my mind to, that I am a disciplined person. Um, so it's just become part of my life at this point. And I'm just it's not, a lot of people admire the way that we look, but to me, I'm most proud of just the consistency and this, and the grit that it takes that I've just keep doing it. So
I've said this a million times. They never show the crying on the treadmill. They never show the just everything else that goes around on this sport. They only just show the end result. So a lot of people just assume, yeah, that like it's not as hard as it is, but it's like the mental
right,
fortitude that these people have is just
right.
absolutely insane. And I cannot say that enough because I think it really does go under notice. But I mean,
It's a fine line though between wanting to show your vulnerability and people perceiving you as a crybaby.
yeah.
So, yeah, when we're on social media and stuff, it tends to be a lot of the highlight reels and not a lot of the in the trenches. But prep, you get in the trenches. You go to some dark, dark places in order to push yourself beyond what your body physically wants to do. So, yeah, we probably should highlight that more so people really don't glamorize it as much because honestly, bodybuilding's not very glamorous. The glamorous part is getting on stage for like that 2 minutes when you do your show and you're all, fixed up. But, the day in and day out of it, it is not a glamorous thing.
Oh my god. I said this in my last podcast, but I'll say it again, where so many people have messaged me being like, "Oh, you must be so lucky you get to talk to all these people and stuff." And it's like, it's really not that glamorous. I talk to them over video cam, and then I'm just editing for the rest of the time. It's like it's not really that big of a. So yeah, it's again.
And it's pretty monotonous. I mean, our life is the same day in and day out. We eat the same things. We do the same.
Yep.
It's very. It works well for people who have OCD and type A personalities because it's very rigid.
I hate to bring it back up again, but Q, like when you said your daughter was going to be a nun, I was like, okay, that's something completely different from the normal that we hear. So that's why it branches out a little bit. But I mean, going into this competitive season and going into this prep, have you already mentally just died, or are you teetering on the edge, and that's coming up in a couple of weeks? Where are you at right now?
Um, I've had a few weeks where it was sucking. Right now, I know it's coming. We've got a real hard push to get that conditioning to where I expect it to be. But this is the part to me that I kind of enjoy. This is those last few weeks. You see those daily changes. You wake up and you know that something's going to be different. So when those wheels start turning and the progress is being made, that just like hypes me up. That those feelings of hunger and going to bed hungry, like I almost thrive on it because I know when I wake up in the morning, like those lines are going to be deeper, that skin's going to be tighter. So that helps me push through these last few weeks. But they're definitely difficult. It's difficult to get through my regular day to day life. It's difficult to go to work and try to keep that mental clarity that I need, or to have my kids here for the week and have to cook meals for them and do all that extra stuff. That's what I struggle with. But like the diet, the training, that stuff hypes me up these last few weeks.
How do you not just like accidentally take a little bit of their food and then just give it a taste? Like how do you that when we talk about the mental strength of this sport, that is probably one of the strongest things is like just not being able to eat that food.
Yeah. So when I get like 3 weeks out, there are little things that I do. I don't really allow any sweets or snacks in the house these last few weeks because the temptation is so great. I cook meals that I don't particularly care for, necessarily, or I've cooked a million times. I know what they taste like, so it's not like I'm like, "Ooh, this is something new. Let me just see what it tastes like." I don't set myself up for failure that way. My boys are a little bit older now. I have a 17-year-old and a 10-year-old, so they are pretty good with, they'll make themselves some food. So, some nights when I have to go to the gym and train, so I'm not always, you know, that's not my job every day. Um, and I have to admit, I'm not the best mom like the last couple weeks of prep because I do a
If
lot
you
of
were, I would nod and say yes, but deep down I'd be like, she's a liar. Like, yeah.
I do a lot of like, hey, can we just pick up some Chick-fil-A and I'll drop it off at the house on my way to the gym. And they're really patient. They know that this is push time. They know this is go time. So they are very understanding when I kind of pull back from my mom duties and I put a little bit more pressure on them to pick up and take care of themselves these last few weeks, just because the energy's low, my patience is low, so we just try to just make things as smoothly as we can these last few weeks.
Please tell me that they're like hiding report cards and stuff like that then, because there's no way. I mean, wait until mom's done with her show and then she can calm down a little bit and then not like, yeah. So
I am like majorly blessed. My kids, all of my kids have always been AB students. They don't give me any trouble in school. Um, I don't even really have to like oversee and make sure they're getting it done. My kids know that like their job is school and they better walk that line.
well, I'll introduce you to my mom one of these days, and she can tell you about our side of that story. Yeah. So I wasn't this, try putting me in a chair for 8 hours and see what happens. That's all I'm
Yeah.
gonna say about school. So there's a.
Uh,
We talked about your work before, but since you've been doing this for such a long period of time, do they understand and do they give you maybe like less tasks to do as these few weeks come down? Because I'm sorry, if you're working with me, I'm like, I don't want the lady that's just mentally dead.
I try to keep that a
Yeah.
secret from everybody. I really try to not discuss my bodybuilding when I'm at work because I don't want people to think that. I don't want people to know really how I'm struggling mentally or physically. A few of my coworkers, they know to just like if I'm not talking, I'm not really interacting, like, besides with my patients, they know what's going on. But I really try not to tell people, especially my patients, like, man, 2 weeks out, I'm brain dead, I'm this and that, because I wouldn't want somebody working on me that was like that. But I've been doing it long enough that I'm not concerned about jeopardizing anybody's safety or health or anything. But, there are days where I'm not as talkative, I'm not as engaging. I'm just trying to get through the day and get the work done. But I really try not to let it interfere with my job. Everybody knows I'm a bodybuilder, everybody knows that I compete, but people don't understand the depth in which that requires, of you. So I just keep that to myself.
Yeah. It's again, if they haven't experienced it themselves, it's hard to comprehend just everything that goes on in the sport. But I mean, I had one night, part of my job, I drive a forklift, and I had one night where I got zero sleep at all. And then I went into work the next morning saying, like, there's a 10% chance I'm going to die today. But you know what? Hey, let's see what happens. So,
I have to say, there's been times where I'm like, oh my God, I've had no sleep,
Mhm.
was training late, or I just couldn't sleep well. And I go into work and I'm praying, like, please don't let me fall asleep with sharp instruments in people's mouths. Like, that would be detrimental. There's a lot of gum chewing and mint sucking sometimes, like, to keep me just alert. Um, but not very often. There's some tricks that I have.
Well, you brought up gum, and I remember that's the only thing I remember from watching The Biggest Loser like decades ago was that they would give them gum because that would like satisfy your cravings. Do you use gum at all during your prep to sort of satisfy cravings?
I do somewhat. I try not to chew too much. So what I do, my favorite gum is icebreakers because I'm a dental hygienist. There's a ingredient called xylitol in it. Xylitol is actually an ingredient that helps prevent cavities. So I will put a piece in my
I'm
mouth.
writing it down right now.
So icebreakers, xylitol is the first ingredient in the gum, and it's one of the only gums where it's the first ingredient. And the ingredients are listed in order of potency in the product. But anyhow, I try not to chew too much because calorie wise, I also am afraid that I'm going to continue to like make my jaw muscles grow bigger if I chew all the time. So what I do is I chew it a little bit and then I just kind of park it, kind of the way people do chewing tobacco, and I just kind of let it sit in there for the flavor absorption. It does seem to mentally help me get through the day without popping, copious amounts of gum. So
Yeah. Well, quick tangent here. I do got to ask. Obviously, you don't name names or anything, but like, what is the worst set of teeth you've ever seen in your entire life working as a dental hygienist?
there's been some bad ones. And it's real unfortunate because a lot of the times the worst ones are people who are struggling mentally. Elderly people who have maybe lost their spouse and have just sort of given up on life, and they're already on a lot of medications that cause dry mouth and things that cause rapid decay. So they come in and their, teeth are just bombed and they're not taking care of them. And it's just a really horrible condition. And it's awful because, I feel for those people. It's not like it's just self neglect because they're lazy. Mentally, people struggle, and a lot of times, your self care is one of the first things to go. So there have been times where like I've had to put cotton rolls up my nose and then put my mask on to try to tolerate that, but that's far and few between. I am very blessed that I live and work in a area where people, we like to say, have a very high dental IQ. They use electric toothbrushes. They come to their dental appointments. They all have, dental insurance. So, I, 97% of my patients are fairly healthy and and care about their hygiene and things. So it makes my job a little easier.
My guess would have been a hockey player, but I don't know if there's that many down there in Florida. But
So that is the main reason that the guys come in with
yeah,
missing teeth.
yep.
It's sports injuries, whether it's a baseball, a hockey puck, somebody, elbowed them at wrestling, lots of men missing their front teeth because of that.
On the flip side, though, has there ever been a set of teeth that you're like, dear God, this needs to be photographed and like
Yes,
it's absolutely perfect? Yeah.
yes, yes. There are some, especially now, everybody seems to have braces. So
Yeah.
these kids, have had their teeth taken care of at a young age. But I mean, there's been plenty of patients that I'll just straight out tell you, like, you have beautiful teeth. Or sound weird sometimes, but I'm like, I don't know if anybody's ever told you this. You have like lips that somebody would like pay big money to have, they're like beautiful. Um, but they know
And then
that.
I would say, look at your shoulders. Let's trade them. Let's trade my teeth for your shoulders, basically.
I'm not giving up my shoulders.
Yeah,
I work hard for these.
Yep. But yeah, no, I was gonna say there was one guy in my high school that had like that set of teeth where you're just like,
Like they're like movie star teeth, right?
well, even better. Like, and the thing was like, and he didn't do anything for him. Like, it was just God given, just perfect set of teeth.
Yeah, the
You're just
shape, the thickness of the enamel, they're nice
didn't even have
size,
braces, didn't even do
right?
anything, and you're just like,
Most people aren't that fortunate, though.
that's when I figured out that life is not fair. Though was
And all
that
those
moment.
people in Hollywood with those perfect smiles, they're all fake, just so everybody knows. Those are all veneered teeth.
Oh yeah.
Most people's teeth are not that white. Most people's teeth are not that straight and perfect. They have $20,000-$30,000 worth of dental work in their mouth.
Which is funny because if you watch like a Will Ferrell movie, he has like those bottom teeth are all messed up because he hasn't had braces. So it's like, oh, someone with actually like normal, like messed up kind of teeth. That's
Comedians can get away with that, though.
Yeah.
It adds character, right?
Yeah.
But those like hunky leading men, they can't have all of that crazy crooked teeth.
Yep. And I mean, this is also a question that I just came up with before I had you last on, and I've been asking it now to guests I've had on. When it comes down to show day, what is your favorite part about show day, and what is your least favorite part about show day?
Ooh, gosh, I love show day. My favorite part really is just being on stage and feeling. I always tell people that it's kind of like your wedding day, because you get all glammed up. Somebody's doing your hair and your makeup. You got your sparkles on, and you get your however many minutes in the spotlight. So it's always great to be able to sort of showcase all your hard work. I really don't like not being on time. When shows run behind, the schedule's not, what it's supposed to be, I start getting like major anxiety. Like, oh my God, am I going to still stay full enough? Am I, do I need to eat more candy? Do I need to have some more salt? I start like freaking out, like what do I look like? Because, I can't see myself really. My coach isn't there with me. That gives me a lot of anxiety when shows don't run smoothly. That's probably the worst of it.
What's your go-to candy to have to get yourself a little sugared up?
I always do just a Snickers. I think the peanuts, the little fats, and then the sugar. But I have learned that I don't have any self control, so I don't take a full Snickers bar. I usually buy those little individual bite size, fun size, because that's all my coach really wants me to have before I get on stage. Just kind of like he calls it a big bite, but my big bite, if I buy a regular Snickers, turns into the whole damn thing. So
I just had a light bulb go off in my head. Why don't they have one of those commercials where the eat a Snickers commercial where the person's all angry and upset like before? Like you could be hangry right before the show and then you just eat a Snicker and then you're ready to go on show and you're all good to go. Commercial, everyone. That's a free idea for the Snickers.
yeah,
It's like how has that not been? Yeah,
I'll take
exactly.
free Snickers.
Free Snickers for life, or do something like that. Yeah. So I
Right.
don't. Yeah.
Even trade.
I'm more of a Milky Way guy myself, but
Okay.
so I got that and Twix too. That's about.
I like Twix. I just don't think I feel like Twix doesn't have enough substance. Like,
Yeah, it's too much cookie in it. Yeah.
yeah, like I feel like I need something denser.
Yeah.
But my favorite is Reese peanut butter cups. But that I think might be too much fat, so I just do Snickers.
Yeah, the peanut butter. That was the one thing when I really started to get into this lifestyle that I never understood was how bad peanut butter actually is for you, and how much. Because I remember when I first started putting on size, and I was eating PB&Js, just taking them to work or going to class with like a PB&J, and I was like, why am I putting on more size? And then I finally looked at like peanut butter and jelly, and I was like, well, having one of these a day probably might not be the best thing for you then when you're doing that.
Right, it's hard to control, and that's another thing during prep. I'll have peanut butter in my off season. During prep, I do not allow myself any peanut butter, even though my coach is like, he gives me an option. You can have like almonds, almond butter, peanut butter. I am afraid that I will take that too big of a scoop or maybe one little extra scoop. And yeah, like you said, that fat and sugar and stuff, it adds up fast. So I just stick to just almonds when I'm in prep. That way, if worst case, I eat one little extra almond or something, it's not going to be detrimental.
Absolutely. And we just got to talk about it. Body dysmorphia. It's one thing that I haven't been talking about as much until I started, having more guests on because I suffered from it even as well. Like I was at a point, obviously I'm not in the best shape right now. It's my winter bod. I'm just April 1st. I'm feeling a little sick today. So that's why I haven't started my working out yet. I'm going to have to start it either tomorrow or Monday because I woke up just not feeling so
As
good.
soon as you bury yourself out from all that snow.
That too. So that can count actually as my first workout then coming back into, because I took like a month off just because my job, I was working such long shifts that like I know everyone says I don't have enough time, and I almost could say that excuse. I had enough time. I was just lazy and didn't want to do it.
Well,
But
when you're working hard, sometimes it's Yeah, you need
Yeah.
rest, and it's hard to
Yep.
to both.
So
But
yeah, I got that going, but God, I totally forgot
it's
what
a
I was even gonna ask you.
body dysmorphia.
Oh, yep. See, that's just one
I
thing that.
have it. I think every
Oh
bodybuilder.
no, really? You have body dysmorphia? Don't tell. I was gonna say I've had one guest that said they didn't have body dysmorphia, and like I told you before, I would just like nod my head and be like, "Yeah, you're right," and then deep down I'd be like, "Biggest lie I've ever met in my entire life."
Yeah, you're either a liar or it's coming.
Yeah,
Brace yourself.
or it's coming. How do you deal with that? Because to me, honestly, as a bystander, it's the most hilarious thing ever. That like you can be in the best shape ever and still think that like you're not big enough or good enough. And when I say it's hilarious to me, I know that like it's a serious mental thing, but like just on the outside when you're like, okay, these are the best of the best, like muscle wise, and they still have times where they're like, am I big enough? Am I good enough? How do you deal with it?
It's hard because I know logically that I'm in better shape than, 99% of the population. I'm at the gym, I'm looking around, I can see that I don't look like a normal person. I'm not that delusional. But um, one thing that I think makes it worse is being on like Instagram and when you're constantly like looking at bodybuilders and looking at people with those kind of physiques that are top, you know, athletes and top physiques, you start to think that that's normal. You start to think that that's what you should look like, and or comparing yourself. Why aren't my legs that big? Why aren't my shoulders that big? I really think that's detrimental, and I think it's gotten worse as I've gotten better. When I first started training, I was like, "Damn, I look good. You look at these little, look at these little muscles." I felt like on top of the world. And then as I'm getting bigger or more improved, or in my eyes more improved, you start nitpicking every little thing, and nothing's. It's hard to have patience. Why can't I bring this body part up? Why can't I? Um, I think that's where it helps to just have good mentally grounded people around you. Also, is good to have like people that are in the sport around you. Like my boyfriend, for example, he knows what he's looking at. So he'll look at me and he's like, Sherry, you're crazy. Like you have this, this is what you really look like. He's my voice of reason. And I know, especially in prep when I'm doubting myself, and he's like, we're good. Like it's good. That I can trust that it's good. Um, I have a problem. I forget the term for it, bigorexia or something
Yeah.
like that, where I don't realize that I'm as big as I am, and I don't think I'm as big as I am. Um, I always think I'm too small. And then I'll see myself in my pictures sometimes with my quote unquote normal friends. And then I'm like, oh, shoot, I look gigantic. But it's not until I put myself, next to a regular person that I realize how big I am. And sometimes patients even come in, and they're like, oh my gosh, like, look at your shoulders. Do you work out? And I'm thinking in my mind, like, I have a jacket on over my scrubs. How can they tell? People are like, you have body dysmorphia. You have no idea what you look like. So I'm guilty of
If only you could take that feeling when you first started working out and put it in a bottle when you first see those results and just use it every once in a while. Because yeah, I'll admit those beginner gain days when you're just like, I look so great, I look great, and then all of a sudden that one day you wake up and you're just like, I need to improve on this, I need to improve on that. I just wish you could keep that entry where you're just like, oh my god, I look so great. Because yeah, it is. I again, like I've had some of the guys that I've even talked to. It's funny because they can barely fit through a door, and then they think that they're not that big, and then you're just like,
it. Right.
you need to have a mirror following you constantly, basically, then just so that it influences that. But I
I,
found that to be just
I'm
fascinating.
curious, in the future, if I'll still have body dysmorphia when I'm done competing. Because I don't necessarily think it's bodybuilding that causes it as much as it's the competitive bodybuilding that causes it. Because, you know, when I look at myself, like I'm happy with my physique and I'm happy with what I've built, and I like what I see. But it's the fear of getting up on stage and being compared as to whether it's good enough. You know, um, I think that's what causes the body dysmorphia for me. So I'm real curious to see once I step back and retire from this sport, if maybe I'll fall back in love a little bit more with the process of bodybuilding and just the being and the small little gains that are happening.
Do you have a date in mind for retirement, or you just take it? No, no.
Um, no, I you know, I I I was putting like an age
Yeah.
timeline on it for a while, but the older I get, um, the less I feel old. And I feel like there's some girls out there who are still older than me that are kicking ass. And so at this point, I'm just going to keep doing it until I no longer enjoy it.
Yeah.
Or I'm competing and I'm coming in third call outs. I'm coming in at the bottom. If that starts to happen, then, you really have to weigh out whether the reward is worth the sacrifice.
Yeah.
So, yeah, but until then, we're just going to keep rolling with it.
How has the sport changed from when you first started, when we first talked, to now? Because the changes, in my opinion, have just been monumental.
um, Well, I mean, the division of or the added, divisions have changed, and a little bit of the criterias have changed. Um, Unfortunately, I don't think that things have become more clear as to what judges are looking for. It's still a fine line between being too conditioned and not conditioned enough, and are you WPD or are you women's bodybuilding, or where you fit, what category. To me, like, the only clear division is bikini. Like, bikini's bikini, um, because then it's like even the figure girls, everybody seems to be getting bigger. Even the figure girls, it's like, gosh, she could probably be WPD. And I know a lot of WPD girls that are moving up to women's bodybuilding this year. So, you know, what I think has changed is the amount of shows. Maybe I'm wrong, but like the amount of competitors this past year at the Olympia was nuts. And and it's always going to be like that though, as long as there's 80, shows for these certain divisions. Yeah, so I don't know. I don't really know if a whole lot's changed in the last 5 years, except it just seems like people are getting bigger and bigger.
Well, that's what it was like for me. Where like some of the guests that when I first started this that I had on that were like WPD, they're not even. I mean, that's like a figure competitor now, basically, and it's vice
Right.
versa. And those bikini competitors, good God, if you talked about 5 years ago to now, it's just
But even the bikini girls are starting to
yeah.
get cap shoulders now. You can now see their abs when it used to be that it was just supposed to be flat and no defined abs. Um, so it's slowly kind of morphing into more and more, I guess. But I really don't know if that's just how it. I don't know.
No, I think it's just an evolving nature of the sport, and who knows, it could swing back
Yeah,
the completely different direction. Who
yeah.
knows? But what is the mental part of this that I think a lot of people enjoy, and like you said, you enjoy is just seeing your body change daily, not even daily, sometimes even hour by hour. What is that like seeing your body just slowly morph? Because a lot of people will never see that type of change in that quick a period of time as when you're in your last few weeks of your prep.
I think that's the coolest part about competing in prep. It's like you're a walking science experiment, really. I have never been so in tuned with every aspect of my body until I competed and watched the process of this. I just find it fascinating. I really do. It's fascinating to see what food really does to your body when you get to this level. How much, like, just a couple of days ago, my coach allowed me to go out and have a burger and fries, and we took pictures before, we took pictures an hour and a half after, we took pictures the next morning, and it was just like, geez, look at just a burger of fries did to my body. So it's just cool. It's cool to watch.
Yeah, I mean, just the simplest things. We're talking sleep, we're talking about water, we're talking about any of that. Just the little
Yeah.
changes that, like you said, you become your own science experiment, basically. And
Even sleep. Yeah. I mean, on the nights that I don't get a good, 7, 8 hours of sleep, I can tell in my check in pictures and stuff that I'm not as tight. My weight didn't drop. I just look a little, more watery. But the nights that I get a good solid amount of sleep, things look crisp and just different. You really, there's a lot of things that go into it. It's not just food. It's not just the exercise. It's a lot. It's your cortisol levels with your stress, that most people don't realize affect how you look. And you really don't see it, I guess, on a normal person. It's not until you get really depleted when you can see everything. So
At what point do you take time off work? Is it when you're 2 weeks out, when you're a week out?
I don't take time off work. I wish I had that luxury.
Oh, okay.
I so like for this show coming up, I am taking off Wednesday. So um, I'll be off Wednesday till the show on Sunday. I'm leaving Thursday to travel. But no, typically I can't just take off a week, of work, and
Yeah.
I tend to do maybe a day or two before the show, and then that's it.
Okay, everyone, if you're scheduled at her clinic on next Tuesday or whatever Tuesday it is before, do not go. Okay, everyone, if you have the chance to one
Right.
day out bodybuilder or whatever it is, or 2 day out or whatever it is, like no, it's not worth it, everyone.
I had a patient say that to me last week. He said, well, how far out are you? I'm like 3 weeks. He's like, well, I'm glad I'm in here now,
Yeah,
and not 2 weeks from now. And I was like, yeah, I bet you are.
yeah. I mean, it's hey, that's even the most impressive thing that you've ever told me is that you still stay at work. That because that's ugh. I could
Well, I
not imagine.
mean, my job requires a lot of accuracy and fine motor skills, but it's not physically
Well,
demanding.
yeah.
I sit at a for the most part, so I'm able to get through it.
How do you ever try to incorporate like steps maybe into your job that you might have to do outside of like do you ever like incorporate the steps that you do at work or do you just track steps entirely differently from when you're not at work?
I mean, like actually physical steps.
Yeah, because even though I know you're sitting down, you still walk around a little bit. Or I have a job where I'm getting like 10 to 15,000 steps just a shift. But
Right.
do you ever add those steps that you might do? Like, let's say you maybe do like 1,000 in a shift. Do you ever add those into your steps for outside, or do you just not even include them?
I don't even include it because I walk back and forth, to get my patients to take things to sterilization. I'm up out of my chair during the day when I when the doctor comes in and does the exams. I stand and I do all my typing that way. Little things that I do like when I'm typing and she's doing her exam, I'm constantly doing vacuums, or squeezing my glutes or something to like have some activation. But as far as the steps and counting that is part of my you know energy out, no, I don't count that.
How long have you been doing vacuums? Because when I first started doing this, no one had ever heard about vacuums. I don't think ever. And then it was all of a sudden, like maybe like 2 or 3 years into doing this, all of a sudden everyone's doing vacuums.
I have I did it pretty consistently last season and this season, and it has helped me tremendously. I still can't do like what I would call a pretty vacuum. I'm not to the point where I would do it as part of my posing on stage, but just that drawing in maneuver, holding it, controlling my breath, has greatly brought my waist in. I've always struggled with a bit wider of a waist. I think just genetically, and then having 3 kids changed that shape for me. Um, I have completely cut out doing any oblique exercises. Do not do obliques. And that has been, I think, a game changer. I tried wearing a waist trainer for a little while, but um, my coach isn't a big advocate on that. He thinks it actually, makes the muscle sort of atrophy. And I think that I get more benefit out of doing the vacuuming as far as keeping that waist, the inside cinched in more so than the waist trainer. So just it's a matter of finding out what worked best for me. As far as ab exercises, I really only do weighted crunches and I have a prep brain
Prep
moment.
brand, yep, everyone.
Yeah, where
No, I know.
you the hanging leg raises.
Yeah. No, see, yep, we got it. And
So yeah, and then I mean, obviously, core activation with your lifting, that happens, and I try to be mindful of that.
when you were wearing a waist trainer, how do you even work out with that? Because that looks like it's the most uncomfortable thing of all time to work out in.
I never wore mine working out.
Okay, I know
It
some
was
people that have, and I'm like, you are psychopaths.
so I'm not knocking bikini girls at all, but their type of training is completely different than the kind of training that I'm doing. They aren't lifting heavy, so they're breathing and their need to expand their diaphragm just isn't the same. I could not train in a waist trainer. I couldn't breathe. I'd probably feel claustrophobic and just like flip out. So I was wearing it at work a lot. I tried wearing it to sleep for a little while, but it was hindering my sleep, I think. So for the most part, I just wore it all day, like while I was at work.
I have seen a WPD person use one while training, and I'll tell you who it is when we're off the podcast. But I was like, okay, more power to you, but like that is just absolutely crazy.
I have seen some girls do it as well, but I just don't see. I think that it's more of a hindrance than a benefit at that point.
Yeah, I don't
And I
understand.
think it creates like a false crutch, a false um like you think that you're supported and you think that your stomach is tight, but you still have to breathe when you're training. So you're still pushing out. You're still, so I don't know.
No,
That's just my opinion. Everybody has their own philosophy on it.
absolutely. And I mean, you gotta talk about posing because it changes up little by little every year. What are some extra added tweaks or things that you're gonna be adding to your posing routine this year?
I have really been working hard on my posing this year because last year it was not so great. I'm working with Brandon Ray on my mandatories for bodybuilding. And then I work with Sharonica Henton, which I have worked with her the last couple of years on my posing routine. Um, I think just getting with somebody who knows how to position your body for the best aesthetics for you, and who knows, bodybuilding poses has been really beneficial for me this year. So I also started way earlier. I used to like wait until the last maybe 8 weeks. I got with, my both of my coaches like around 16, 12 to 16 weeks out this year. Um, and part of my just training is just daily 10 to 15 minutes of posing practice. We use that as part of my cardio. So a way more repetitive with it this year than I have been in the past.
It's just like working out. You get the reps in, and it gets better and better over time. And
And you learn, I mean, I'm still learning so much about not just the posing, but the breathing aspect that comes with it in order to hold the poses and not look like you're struggling on stage and to not lose control of your midsection. There's techniques that are involved in that I didn't realize when I first started out, and I'm starting to learn. But that's, like I said, that's what makes pros look like pros. It's just the learning and the repetitiveness.
we talked about little tips and tricks. What's one tip and trick that you've learned probably just in your training aspect this year alone that you hadn't learned before?
Hmm. I don't really think it's a tip or a trick, but one thing that I have been more mindful of is probably, slowing it down and getting more out of my negatives than just the contraction. I think when I first started training, a few years ago, it was, everybody wants to concentrate on the contraction, but really realizing that lengthening that muscle and, controlling the negative is also what's going to help, build your muscle. So I've been focusing a lot more on that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these two questions are questions I ask you every single time, and I will continue to ask you every single time as we get close to wrapping things up here. You could change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding, and everyone would go along with it. Will be one thing that you'd like to see changed.
Ooh, um, Jesus, it's always such a tough question. I really wish that it was just more socially embraced.
Yeah.
I'm really disappointed this year with the exclusion of a lot of the women's divisions at the Arnold. I feel like we're kind of taking a step back. Um, I would like to see a little bit more, maybe personal disclosure on judging. I think it would be great if we knew exactly what each judge judged, or scored, just to help keep everything kind of, accountable. Um, being a female, of course, I always say more equality in the pay, between men and women.
Mm-hmm.
Those are just a few things.
I mean, yeah, we could go on 10 hours talking about stuff that needs to be changed and
Yeah.
done. But yeah, when it left the Arnold, I was shocked when they canceled all that stuff. And then they included like arm wrestling and like all these other like stupid
Right.
competitions. And it's
I
like,
think last year it was like slap fighting or something.
that is
I think,
entertaining. I will give you that. But like the other stuff, yeah, because it's like, I want to watch people slap the crap out of each other. That's pretty entertaining. But yeah,
yeah,
I get what you're saying. Yeah,
but that's supposed to be, one of the top tier shows for our divisions. And then to, have that gone. I mean, I guess now that they're not doing the point system, it really doesn't matter. Um, but it's just disheartening
Mhm.
that I feel like, it's non-inclusive of women, and that's disappointing
I
these
do
days.
want to know the backstory of these people that get slapped, though. I want to know like why they're volunteering for this. What led them down life's path where they decide, you know what,
Right.
this seems like a good
Well, they
idea.
say, "Oh, well, it's not as popular, it's not drawing in the money, it's not," but how do they know? I mean, they don't
Yeah,
track when somebody buys a ticket, they don't track what they're there to see. They don't know who
yeah,
they're there to see. So how do they know that? Who's making those calls?
yeah. I don't.
Well, that's another thing maybe that could be improved, that, when shows sell tickets, maybe you have to buy a ticket per division that you want to see, or maybe, you have to fill out some type of questionnaire when you buy
Yeah,
your ticket. It would be I'm just curious to know, um, you know, I think there's more people there to see women than they want to admit.
I would say that as well. I would say it's a magnitude probably higher of what they'd actually say, just because, like you said, not a lot of people. Like you said, there's no reason for anyone to like say like, "Oh, what are you here for?" Basically, it's just yeah, come on in and see all the stuff. So
Yeah.
yeah, I wish they did have more of that stuff for women too, because it's like yeah, the women's stuff it's just as hard as the men. They work just as hard, if not harder. It's just so much more is put into this sport than they
Just
realize.
as expensive, if not more,
It's more expensive. Let's be honest. You don't have to wear
our
a trunk.
suits and yeah, hair and makeup and all of that. And yeah, so, like you said, we diet just as hard. We
The
train
guys
just
aren't getting manicures before they step on stage. I'll just leave it at that. No,
it's all
that
right. It's okay to get a little pampering.
oh, exactly. There is that. And Sherry, when we do have you on a year from now, again, we will have you on in a year. I don't know. We'll probably. I don't even know how long I'll do this, but when I do have you on a year from now, where would you like to be at in your journey? Where would you like to be at just in your overall life? What are some goals that you'd like to have achieved?
Um, boy, well, I would really love to qualify for the Olympia this year, and not just qualify, but place top 5 at the Olympia would be an amazing goal. So I wish that, when I got back on next year, I could say that happened. Um, I'm working on, educating myself to start maybe doing some training, clients and online, nutrition for people. Just because I have so many people ask me for help, but I don't want to offer it without feeling like I'm qualified to do so. So I'm in the process of getting certifications for those. It would be nice to maybe start doing some online work so that I can, I still want to do my dental hygiene job, but I would like to maybe back off a little bit of that and do a little bit more from home to allow me to be able to, travel more and just enjoy life a little bit more. My job is very limited as far as vacation time and days off, because I have 8 to 10 patients a day that require me to be there. So I can't just call in or take an hour or two. So those are just some personal things that I'm working on. Um, you know, I've tossed around the idea of maybe opening a gym in the area. There's a lot of box gyms here, but there's not any uh, what I would call elite personal training studios. And that's something that maybe down the road I would enjoy doing as well. So, that maybe that might not be next year, but we'll see.
Hey, again, it always starts with a dream, and it always
Right,
starts with a little idea. So, again,
right.
that's how this all got started anyway. So it's yeah, it just you gotta take the little steps. And again, Sherry, I look forward to seeing how you place in these shows and how you do. I mean, I don't know how you keep getting better year after year, and if we do have you on in like 5 years, I don't know what the hell you're gonna look like, because it's like I don't know how it gets any better. So it's just for me that you're the one guest where I'm always looking and being like, okay, I can't wait to see like what she looks like this next year, because like there's the last 2 years especially, there've been years I was like, she can't get any better, and then I have her on, and she's like,
Well, I appreciate it, Ryan, but that's the name of the game. If you're
"Mm,
not improving, you're getting left behind. So,
yeah,
and that's the goal, and that's what a lot of competitors need to realize, that we all want to win,
mhm,
but as long as you really have made some changes and made improvements to yourself, that no matter what some judge says of you, you know you're winning.
yeah."
So
I've always said just to step on that stage, you should get. I mean, it just takes so much hard work and dedication just to even step on that stage, and
right,
you've won.
right.
Now that that's just the fun. Then the fun begins where you just get to show off all that hard work. But again, Sherry, I cannot thank you enough for coming back on. I really, really appreciate it. And like always, I'll leave a link to her Instagram down below. And you will scare some people with just how lean you get in these next 3 weeks. I will just say that ahead of time, and it will
Yes,
be
freak,
shocking.
the
But
freak factor's coming.
the
It
freak
always
factor is coming. Yes. So there is that. But again, Sherry, thank you so much.
I appreciate you having me, Ryan. It's always a pleasure.
All right, everyone. This is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing off. Have a great day, everyone.